ITV is refusing to bow to pressure to move its tea-time drama Jekyll and Hyde to a later slot after the Watershed, despite more than 500 complaints about violent scenes in the show's first episode on Sunday. Here's Tom Bateman transforming into Hyde and causing a bit of a rumpus in a bar.
And all his life he tried to be good, he tried to do the right thing, and where do you think that got him?
I don't know, darling. Where did it get him?
Right. Here. In this charming rat hole. Everything he loved in the whole world gone. So, what good did it ever do him, being good?
Oh, dear. I seem to have got it all wrong.
Oh, do shut your face!
The next episode is on ITV at 6:30 Now, if you try and watch it on ITV's catch-up service, a message pops up on the screen to say that you must be over 18 to watch it because it contains material which would normally be broadcast after the Watershed or is unsuitable for children. Yet it is on 2.5 hours before the Watershed, which seems odd. So where does this leave the Watershed? Back in January, the Director General of the BBC said it might not survive the next few decades. I speak to Martin Campbell, is a former chief advisor to Ofcom. We're both somewhat hampered here, Martin, by not having seen the thing. But, we take it there's a significant amount of people upset by it. What kind of criteria should be applied?
The criteria that is applied in cases like this is actually quite simple. The level of violence, the level of sex. And by the way, with people who haven't watched it, you will find that many, particularly something like this that gets publicity, many of the complaints that go to Ofcom are by people who haven't actually seen it. And in a way that really doesn't matter because, they have a view. You don't need to be attacked to know that assault is not a good idea. So Ofcom are used to dealing with this sort of thing. But the levels, it appears to me, from what I've read and from the clips that I've seen, that if you actually did put the criteria across this programme, it should never have been shown before the Watershed. And the problem with the Watershed is that it is all but disintegrated. I think if it goes, it'll be very sad, but it's all but disintegrated.
I believe we have somebody with us, Martin, who did see it. Boyd, were you offended by it? Boyd Hilton, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Not at all, no, I wasn't offended at all. I think...
were you watching with children by any chance?
I went to a big screening at the BFI in London. I think there were children there. I'm pretty sure there was a kind of a smattering of children and certainly young teenagers in the audience because it's definitely been pitched as a family-friendly show by ITV, clearly why they're showing it at that time. And I didn't get any sense at all that people were offended by it. I think it is scary. There are monsters in it. There are moments in it that definitely push the boundaries of what people might be used to. But I think, there's a strong tradition of family-friendly fantasy and horror, going back to Doctor Who. And I think kids love this stuff. That's the bottom line. I think, parents might worry that kids are being overly frightened by this kind of thing. But I think actually kids get a kind of visceral pleasure out of being scared without it going too far. And there's nothing in this show that is inappropriate in the end, I think, for a certain age of children.
So it does beg the question why they put the warning on the ITV catch-up service. It seems a ludicrous own goal.
I certainly think so. It is locking the stable door. You see, the problem with content and the Watershed over the years is that the main, obviously the internet, that's a separate problem that you may want to touch on, and everything is available for everybody, every level, every genre, and all sorts of content. But the other thing that has happened is that over particularly the last 3 or 4 years, Ofcom has allowed the soaps to push the barrier, really, and push the envelope further and further forward to the point where the genie really is out of the Watershed bottle, and I think that's a shame. The soaps are on an hour and a half before the Watershed. This was 2.5 hours before the Watershed. So once you've allowed the soaps to do a lot of things that they do, and they justify it very often by saying, well, we need to highlight social issues, and of course there's always a scintilla of truth in there, but we all know what's happening. It's a race for viewers. And to allow that to have gone on, I think makes it very difficult now to shore up the Watershed.
Okay, Billy on Twitter has just said, I did watch it and could see how some children might be scared by it, but having said that, the clue is in the title, which I suppose is a fair point. Boyd, do you think we're going to have, in even 5 years' time, still have a Watershed?
I do, yeah. I think the Watershed makes sense because it indicates to viewers what is and isn't appropriate. I mean, as an adult, I would be annoyed if adult-oriented programming was shown before 9 o'clock. I think it would be weird, and I think you want to know what is suitable for you as a grown adult and what is suitable for children. And I think the Watershed serves that function still. I can't understand why TV companies would avoid it, really. You know, it just makes complete sense. This Jekyll and Hyde is for me, is a complete red herring. It's a show, clearly, it's a fantasy. It's got monsters in it. It's just not... And I think the point about the soaps is very interesting. I think that's more of a question for me. I agree with that, because they rely to some extent, albeit within the context of greatly exaggerated plot lines, a certain amount of realism, whereas this is an out-and-out fantasy show, and I think in that context, what was in it was absolutely fine. I think, in the end, any show that has nudity, swearing, and a certain type of violence, realistic violence, if you like, has to be shown after 9 o'clock, just because it clearly indicates to everyone what the situation is. It wasn't one of those shows. This show is absolutely fine.
OK, gentlemen, thank you very much. Boyd Hilton from Heat magazine and Martin Campbell, former chief advisor to Ofcom.